Canada?
Or USA?
We've talked about real estate before, but what about healthcare, taxes, lifestyle, safety?
Right now, with the situation that everyone's facing, everyone seems to think that the US is the golden option. But that might not be the case.
My name is Daniel Bozic. I'm broker owner of the Dan Lee Group.
And I'm Sean, partner at the Dan Lee Group.
Well, healthcare. Everyone brags about Canada having this great healthcare. It's free, there's nothing to worry about.
Is it free though? Because I'm pretty sure we pay for it in our taxes.
Yeah.
I saw someone break it down recently.
It is true. And when we really think about the Canadian healthcare, like we had a situation here just in Oakville recently where somebody ended up going to the ER, and I think they waited for 18 hours before they saw a doctor. And unfortunately, I feel bad, but that 14-year-old boy succumbed to his injuries. And of course, the parents were not very happy. And that's a sad situation. But that's our healthcare. You think about it.
So, would you rather have healthcare that you have to wait long times for, you don't get decision making quickly, but it's free, or would you rather pay a monthly premium in insurance to have access to it 24/7 at your whim?
Yeah, and you know, we both have friends that live in the U.S. and healthcare varies in costs. And again, don't quote me on the prices, but they're anywhere from $500 to $800 a month for their healthcare per person. They do have massive deductibles. I'll let you know that. So it's more of a security blanket, really. So you're only going to go to the doctor or the hospital if something's broken or you need to get something cut off. So, but for the most part, I know people that live here in Canada that will go across the border to Buffalo to get an MRI the same day, and they'll just pay for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot more quality in the U.S. than there is quality in Canada of healthcare.
I have to agree 100%. I think what we have great doctors, don't get us wrong, like the doctors and everything are great, but the time you have to wait for certain things, like a simple knee operation, for instance. Here in Canada, you could be on a waiting list for 18 months. 18 months to wait for your knee operation. In the U.S., it moves a lot quicker because you're paying for it.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, if you get in an accident, you hurt yourself in the U.S., you're actually paying for it through the deductible, whereas in Canada, there's no charge when you go into the hospital. Whatever happens, it's fully covered. So you could be paying upwards of $5,000-$6,000 on a visit in the U.S., and you're walking out with a lollipop in Canada.
Yeah, it definitely. I would have to if we had to put a ranking, healthcare in Canada, healthcare in the U.S. I have to give the check mark to Canada. I think our healthcare system is much better than the U.S. If you have a serious issue, you know, you do have some things that fall through the cracks, but for the most part, I've spent I hate to say it, but you know, unfortunately, I've spent some time in the hospital the last few years, and I was treated well. Service was good. They got me in and out quickly. So for my experience, and it didn't cost me anything. If I was in the U.S., those stays would have been $3,000-$4,000 a night. You know, my bill would have been $50,000, $75,000, and this is a very important point. The number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S. medical bills. You never see that in Canada.
So for me, I would prefer the U.S. healthcare system, but that's probably because of my age, being how young I am, and I'm not too concerned about long trips to the hospital or worrying about like ASAP treatment. So I would prefer the U.S. because if I do have something that happens to me, I'd want to make sure that it's done right away, whether it's an MRI or something of that nature. I'd rather get the most amount of care 24/7 than waiting for it in Canada.
That's fair.
If I get to pay a little bit less taxes, great.
Okay, so the next big thing is housing. Okay, we got Canada versus the U.S. in housing. What's your thought on that?
Well, take, for example, the average price of a home in Ontario, or let's just say Toronto, for example, is $1.2 million. Average price in Texas is $330,000. I think from a housing perspective, I'd prefer U.S. housing prices.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a whole caveat of pros and cons to go into that, and we've already done a video on that. So I mean,
yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you want to see that video, it's housing versus Canada versus, actually, I think it was Toronto versus Texas. Probably should have been a more specific Canada, like Toronto versus Dallas. But if you took those two major cities and the average prices, it's about a third of the price of Toronto, basically. That's roughly what you're getting, a detached house average in Toronto compared to Dallas. So, and that video kind of goes over a lot of the pros and cons. So I'd have to say housing is definitely more affordable for the most part, unless you're, Manhattan, New York, or on the water in Miami. The U.S. is going to have much more better affordable housing in the major cities.
I definitely agree with that. There's 100% correct. Canada is not affordable by any means, but I feel like with certain jobs, I could go into the U.S. and I could buy a home tomorrow.
Yeah. I have to add this caveat, though. There are affordable homes in Ontario or in Canada, but you are going to be far away from a major city. Like, you're not going to be, you'll be at least an hour and a half, 2 hours from Toronto to get even close to some of the U.S. city pricing. So if you want to live in a major city in Canada, in Ontario, like near Toronto, near Ottawa, Burlington, anything on the Golden Horseshoe, you've got to start going north. And even north, you have to go to outside north. Like if you just go straight up to 400 or 410 or 404, the prices are expensive, right? So you got to start getting away from Toronto to get prices even close to equivalent. Like if you took all of Ontario and Texas and compared those two, I'm going back to those two, but it's true. Like you are much better off. Like I know I'm kind of killing a dead horse here though, but housing prices are definitely way better in Canada. I mean in the U.S. for that.
So here's the one thing that kills me the most is taxes in Canada. We get squeezed here for every penny for a lot of reasons. But compare that to the U.S., which I don't know the U.S. tax system as well. So I don't know if you can shed some light on the comparisons between the two. I just know what it's like here in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we are taxed a lot more than the U.S. In the U.S., well, in Canada it's very similar too. We have a federal tax and a provincial tax. But on top of that, income tax, we're paying tax on everything we buy. We've got the HST in Ontario. We have gas tax. We have tax on housing. Like everything you buy is taxed. So you've given the government, basically, I think they say if 51% of the money you make goes to taxes here in Canada. In some cases even more, a little bit more. Where the U.S., like people that live in Florida, tax rate's a lot less. Like it's more around the 30%, 25 to 30%. So that's why a lot of big companies and billionaires move down to Florida.
Yeah, so there's a lot of states in the U.S. that don't have state taxes, which makes it a lot more lucrative on an income perspective. Property taxes down there are done slightly differently than they are here, are they?
Yeah, they are done differently. They're like, I know Florida, for instance, will go off the value of your house, and it's almost a yearly change. Whereas here in Ontario, we have a MPAC. Basically, it's every 4 years they reevaluate your house and they phase it in. In Florida, they'll go straight off the sale of your house. So if your house sell, it's let's say $1, roughly $1. I think it's 1,000. So if it's $1 million house, it's $10,000 tax, right? That's how it works. And if it sells for 800, the next year you can go apply and get that tax lowered. But if it sells for more, they're going to up your tax. So it goes right off what your house sells for and what the house is worth at that time. So that's one thing about the taxes there. I've seen some high tax prices in the States in some of those areas.
Yeah, so there's obviously some big tax differences from Canada and the U.S. So which one would you say you would prefer over the other?
Well, I mean, our tax dollar does go to our health care, so we do get that end of it. So, but I think if you go straight off tax, I think it goes a lot off where you are financially. If you're making very good money and you're doing well in life, I think it's much better to live in the U.S. for tax purposes. I have to
100%
agree 100%. But if you're basically at survival level for income, I think Canada's better. So one thing definitely to keep in mind, if you're middle-aged, a little older, getting up in age, and you're middle class, being in the U.S., if you have health issues or have anything that way, it could really affect you financially and affect your retirement, where you're not going to have that issue in Canada.
So in summary, Canada has higher tax brackets or higher taxes than the U.S. And then in the U.S. you have different, more complex taxes state to state. But overall, I mean, personally, I would pick the U.S. tax system over Canada tax system.
I would have to agree.
Stats show the U.S. has a lot higher gun violence rates in the U.S. than in Canada, but a lot of Canadians say they feel more unsafe than U.S. citizens feel in their countries. Which country would you say has the edge in this situation for safety?
For safety, yeah, I'd have to agree. I think I don't want to get political with gun laws and things like that. Definitely a lot easier to own a gun in the U.S. People say that's good. Let's not get into that argument. But if I think both countries have gotten a lot more violent than they were, and it seems to be where we are right now. Like we see it here a lot more too, and we're seeing a lot of people feel uncomfortable just going around for groceries or going on the TTC or in the buses here, and like safety is not like it used to be here. That's my belief. I don't think the U.S. and Canada are much different. I think even though it might be a little harder to get guns, so-called guns in this country, criminals are going to find guns. So I think it's the same. I don't see a big difference in crime in these two countries.
I got to be honest with you. I completely disagree, and I'm going to pick, because we're picking a side.
Yes.
I'm going to pick Canada in this situation. I would rather be taken of things than have to be in a gunfight personally. So I'm going to draw the line here, and I'm going to just sit on the Canadian side for the safety issues, personally, respectfully, of course.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, over there in the U.S., they have much more control and the gun control and things like that. Here, we have less ways of protecting ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think, again, I'll go back to the crime rate. I think it's pretty even. The reason, and I'm going to say this, the reason the U.S. feels a lot worse, it's just 10 times the size of our country. So you're going to see 10 times more in the news. That's the bottom line. It's not like they're 10 times worse. If you go by population or by person, I don't think the crime rate's much difference. Look it up. Ask ChatGPT. But the thing is, it's 10 times. That's what we see 10 times more in the news.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying from a personal standpoint, because this is strictly biased, the opinions from Canada to U.S., I'm picking Canada. You're picking the U.S.
I didn't pick the U.S. I didn't
so
pick
what
the
are you
U.S.
picking? Can you
I
pick
said
a side?
they don't. I said as far
I'm
as
not even
crime,
sure what you've said in the last 10 minutes, but if you could pick a side, that'd be great.
What I'm trying to say is I don't think I wouldn't make my choice on to live in Canada or the U.S. on crime. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that is a neutral topic.
Done.
Both sides are going to have crime, and both sides are going to have good people. I think that is don't let that pick where you're going to live. You're going to have your bad cities, you're going to have your good cities, you're going to have your good people, your bad people. It's a wash, even.
It's a wash.
So final conclusion.
So to conclude, you picked the U.S. in every category except the last one.
Yeah, and I honestly stand by it. I think I would even go as far to transition to the U.S. given even my last pick. I'm completely fine with the safety in both countries.
Yes.
I just prefer the U.S. lifestyle over the Canadian one today.
We talked about a lot of different things here, but what we specialize in is, of course, real estate. If you have any questions about real estate, if you're concerned about our market here in Canada, or even if you're looking about moving to the U.S., comment any questions you may have down below, and we'll get back to you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.